Okay. Okay, thank you members for joining us on a very foggy morning and battling through the traffic this morning. The committee will discuss today and will consider 3 statutory rules and 5 proposals for statutory rules which are not subject to any procedure. We're going to consider written evidence from DFI on the review of planning, development management regulations, Northern Ireland 2015. And just going to proceed through the agenda as follows. So apologies. We have an apology from Cahill. I don't think we have any other apologies at this stage. There's Mark.
Deputy Chair might be late.
And the Deputy Chair might be late as well to the meeting. Declarations of interest remind members that they are obliged to declare any relevant financial or other interests which might reasonably be thought by others to influence their approach to the matter under consideration. Any members who have interest to declare in relation to today's business should do so now or when the particular matter arises in the meeting. So does any member have any interest they wish to declare? No? Okay. Chairperson's business. There is none at this moment in time, but I just wanted to say in relation to we obviously at the weekend had a huge amount of flooding across Northern Ireland, and homes were impacted, businesses were impacted again. I seen it even in my own area in relation to the huge amount of rainfall that fell over a short period of time and the amount of people that were affected. I was just wondering how members felt about this, whether it would be useful to maybe get a report from that period of time over the weekend from DFI in relation to the different divisions to see, yes, we recognise an awful lot of rainfall, nobody can control that, but in relation to what the divisions actually think caused the extensive flooding. Was it gullies? Was it something else? And was there any learning that could be taken out of the weekend's flooding incidents from Storm Bert? So does anybody want to add anything to that?
Yeah. I think that would be good. I know that certainly, thankfully, our area wasn't as badly hit as other areas, but there still is surface flooding issues in Newcastle. There still is issues, it seems, with surface water draining. So certainly I think any information and any presentation going forward would be useful, Chair. I think that's important, because this is only going to, I mean, it's a regular occurrence now. These storm systems have bigger intensity, and I think it's something we have to really think about.
I know it's something that the committee, we have had world sessions in relation to flooding, and I know an awful lot comes back to flooding forecasting and the budget constraints that are there in relation to getting a better system in place for that. But just if there were any individual sort of learning exercises that could be taken from Storm Bert.
Thanks, Chair. No, I just concur with that, and I think again it highlights the need for regular maintenance, particularly of gullies. We had a number of incidents in North Down and Bangor, particularly in Donegal and areas where it looks like it was down to gullies not being maintained as well as they should be. So I think we can maybe emphasise that too in writing, that the need for that investment continually all through the year to avoid issues like we've seen at the weekend.
Okay.
Mark?
I've been on about this for a long time to DFI, and it was around the use of technology to actually record and monitor maintenance of gullies. Now, the most recent answer I got from the Minister now is finally something is being done in this regard, so maybe if we could get a wee update on that.
In terms of the gullying or in terms
gullying,
of...
Gullying, and it obviously is a contributor to flooding, particularly surface flooding, because with the 1 a year cycle, it doesn't mean that they're even cleaned once a year. It means that they're visited once a year, and if there's a car parked over one of them, it's not done. And there's not, to date, there hasn't been a proper recording system or monitoring system as to what's been cleaned and what hasn't.
Yeah. And I suppose last week we had discussed about the fact that the 1 million secured out of the October monitoring round, 1 million sounds like an awful lot, but when you break it down, and I have asked for a breakdown just in relation to where that money is going to be spent, because I think that would be useful to see that. But Danny, I'm going to bring you in.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And yeah, no problem with that. Any learning is important from any things that happen. I suppose just for me, the resilient communities is so important in this. We were able to access within our own community an area that doesn't really flood that often. It takes a big event, and we had lots of flooding. But because we had quick access to sandbags, we protected a number of homes. So I think that's very important in all of this as well, is that joint up approach with councils and with communities to make sure they have access to sandbags very quickly. But when services are stretched across the board, it's extremely difficult to get to every community. So I think that's definitely on top of the list of learnings in all of this.
Okay, members content with that? Yeah. Okay, thank you for that wee bit of latitude in relation to that. Agenda item 4 is the draft minutes. At page 8 is the draft minutes of the proceedings of the meeting on the 20th of November 2024. Seek agreement that members are content that the minutes are a true and accurate reflection of the meeting on the 20th of November 2024, and if so, I'll sign the minutes now. Content? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, item 5 is matters arising. At page 17, you'll see correspondence from Northern Ireland Wedding Vehicle Association request for a meeting regarding the effect of the taxi regulations. Remind members that this was raised during last week's meeting, and members were advised that the correspondence would be available in the meeting pack. Also remind members that you'll remember we did get correspondence which was dated the 8th of November in response to similar concerns that were raised by the National Association of Funeral Directors, which was included in last week's pack, and the response advised that there was no proposal to change the regulations set out under the Taxis Act Northern Ireland 2008, and that any change would require a full review of the taxi regulatory framework. So I'm seeking members' agreement in the first instance to forward the correspondence from the Northern Ireland Wedding Vehicle Association to DFI for comment and clarification of why a full review of the taxi regulatory framework would be required, because I don't think we actually know that at this moment in time. Yeah,
I think he
Peter
mentions in the correspondence that they've been in front of the committee before in the last session. Would it be possible to maybe add them to the forward work programme to get them back in? I mean, I don't want to make it Groundhog Day for them, but I mean, he mentions, and I have looked back at the previous correspondence, and people seem broadly supportive of what was being discussed. Mm-hmm. So would it be possible, Keith, I think were you on the committee?
Yeah.
Did I see before, yeah. So, I mean, would it be possible to maybe add them to your forward work programme to get them in to talk about this? Because it does seem reasonable what they're talking about.
So that would be, rather than an informal session, are you requesting a formal session in relation to that?
Yeah, I think formal session.
Okay.
But also writing to the minister as well to find out what their thoughts on it are.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm happy enough for that. This is obviously for this gentleman, Mike Barr, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy enough for that. And he gets an understanding of it again, yeah. I think I'm doing harm.
You will understand from the correspondence there's a company, and I want to make sure that anybody that has come into the committee, I do know obviously it was raised in the correspondence that it is on behalf of the Northern Ireland Wedding Vehicle Association. So if they're coming to the committee, they would be coming under the auspices of the Northern Ireland Wedding Vehicle Association, because I'm very reluctant to open it up to a single company in relation to this. It is a wider issue across, taxis, wedding car companies, funeral directors. So they'll be coming, I think our correspondence would be making very clear they're coming as the Wedding Vehicle Association.
That was the guys that they came here before. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's under that. Yeah.
It's important that we raise this and push this for the wedding car operators, for the funeral directors. A review has been promised by a number of ministers on this. So, I mean, it is Groundhog Day in many respects, but at least in the past, they've been listened to and assured there will be a review. I go back to, I'm like Uncle Albert when I was Minister. The whole Act had to be enacted before the review could take place. And it was sort of like pass the parcel. This was initially passed in Stormont. It was the first piece of legislation passed. It was in 2007, and the music stopped when it was in my lap. Okay, so I had to do the final wee bits around metering and things like that, and that had to be done so the Act in its entirety could be reviewed. Okay, and there were some unpalatable bits at the time in that legislation, but well, no, we need to review the whole thing, so we have to enact these final bits. So I'd done that, then there was to be a review. Subsequent to that, I think it was Chris Hazard says, oh, it will be reviewed. Then Nicola Mallon had been in, she says there'll be a review, but now Minister Dowd saying, oh, there's no need to review it.
Yeah, and I think as well in relation to, think a bit of clarity and understanding of, in the correspondence it does says about, you know, a certificate of exemption, you know, so why would there need to be a full review of the taxi regulatory framework for just something like an exemption certificate type of thing, you know? So yeah, no, I completely take your point, Mark. Thank you for that. Members content then? We're going with a formal meeting then in relation to that?
Yeah.
Content? Okay, we will add that then as a formal meeting then to our forward work programme. Okay, thank you. Page 19, there's a copy of the Examiner for Statutory Rules 27th report. I remind members that the committee agreed last week that it had no objection to any of the rules listed in the report for the Department for Infrastructure. I'm asking members if they're content to note the Examiner's report. Content? Yeah. Okay. Item 6 is correspondence. At page 29, you'll see the correspondence memo. At page 95, you'll see the Minister for the Future of Roads responding regarding the cross-government task force on motor insurance. Inform members that the Minister for the Future of Roads has advised that the Secretary of State for Transport has written to the Finance Minister along with counterparts in Scotland and Wales to facilitate discussion on key differences across the markets and how these impact the cost of insurance. So obviously just want to welcome that the task force wants to ensure it collaborates effectively to reflect the diverse need and the challenges and opportunities across the UK, and certainly whenever we met with FCA, that was part of the conversation as well, ensuring that Northern Ireland had a voice in relation to the motor insurance issue. So I'm just also seeking agreement from the committee that we ask the Finance Minister to provide an update on the issues discussed once the meeting with the task force and devolved legislators has taken place. Happy with that? Okay, thank you. Page 95, you'll see correspondence from Save the Moat, Save the Sperrins, request for copy of the committee correspondence from the Minister of Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs regarding planning delays. Advise members that a copy of the letter has been requested and is included at pages 116 to 119 in the meeting pack for members' convenience. So I'm just seeking members' views, or if they want to agree, the request to provide a copy of the response from the Minister of Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs to Stop the Moat, Save the Sperrins group.
What's the normal approach with that? Do we normally do that?
Well, there's nothing through an FOI process that letter could potentially go. There's nothing within that letter that would, it's not commercially sensitive, for example. There's nothing within that letter that would stop it necessarily for getting out into the public domain. So it's really up to members whether they are happy to allow that piece of correspondence to go to the group. In a sense, the correspondence has come to us, so we have ownership of that correspondence now. So it is really up to members in terms of what they would wish to do.
So we're referring to the response you got from DAERA with respect to planning delays.
Yeah.
Whether we let that
Yes.
document.
Yeah. The Save the Moat
Yeah,
group are
yeah,
just
really.
looking. Huh?
They can get it anyway through.
Yeah,
wire
so-
or not,
Exactly. So are members content then for it to be forwarded to them?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, at in your table packs at page 3, you'll see the DFI correspondence in terms of Belfast traffic. Advise members that the department has provided details of the mitigation measures that have been or will be implemented in order to mitigate some of the traffic congestion being experienced in Belfast. We all are experiencing this traffic at the moment, and it'll be interesting to see how these mitigation measures do actually play out. I wasn't convinced last night, having sat in traffic from this building, that some of the mitigation measures have helped so far. But are members content to note the correspondence, or has anybody any comment that they wish to raise at this moment in time? Content to note? Okay. I'm seeking agreement that members are content to note the correspondence and the remaining suggested actions as contained in the correspondence memo in the pack. Content? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Item 7 is subordinate legislation. SR is not subject to assembly procedure. Advise members that there are 3 statutory rules that are not subject to assembly proceedings and are not required to be laid. These are at pages 123 to 134 of the meeting pack and are the SR 2024-193, the road speed limit number 5, order Northern Ireland 2024. The SR 2024-194, the weighting restrictions Draperstown order Northern Ireland 2024, and the SR 2024-195, the schools part-time 20 mile/hour speed limit amendment number 2, order Northern Ireland 2024. Remind members that the committee noted the proposals for the statutory rules at its meeting on the 6th and 20th of November 2024. Ask members if they are content to note the statutory rules. Content? Yep. Okay, item 8 is subordinate legislation SL1 not subject to assembly procedure. Advise members that there is one SL1, and a number of related maps which cover proposals for 5 separate statutory rules that are not subject to assembly proceedings and are not required to be laid. These are listed from pages 136 to 147 and are the SL1 loading bays on roads amendment order Northern Ireland 2024, SL1 the on-street parking amendment order Northern Ireland 2024, SL1 the urban clearways amendment order Northern Ireland 2024, SL1 the parking places on roads Samefield order Northern Ireland 2024, and the SL1 the parking and waiting restrictions Limavady order Northern Ireland 2024. Ask members if they have any issues they wish to raise on any of the proposals. No? Okay, I'm asking members if they're content with the proposals for the statutory rules. Content?
Yep.
Yeah. Item 9 is a review of the Planning Development Management Regulations Northern Ireland 2015. At page 149 is a DFI cover letter. At page 152 is a public consultation summary of responses. Inform members that the consultation covered 3 areas: classes of development and threshold, predetermination hearings, and proposals to provide for both in-person and online electric pre-application community consultation public engagement. The consultation closed on the 4th of March 2024 and the summary of the responses to the consultation has been provided. The department advises that officials continue to review and analyse the responses to inform suitable recommendations which they hope to provide to the Minister in early 2025. So as per usual, members, if you're content to note the update, and I think it's important that we do as a committee request that we are provided with an update on the proposed way forward, and that we do have an opportunity to provide any comment that we may wish to make before the Minister makes any final decision. Planning is a massive issue, as we know, and I think it's important that the committee do get oversight of some of that. So are you content with that approach, or any comments that anybody wishes to raise on that? Content? Okay. Item 10 is the forward work programme. At page 647 is the draft forward work programme. And 4 members of the Law Society will attend the meeting on the 11th of December to give evidence on the issues raised regarding regional property certificates. So I'm seeking agreement to proceed with the evidence sessions as set out in the draft forward work programme and to reflect any decisions taken today. Content with that? Yeah. And then members, I'm seeking agreement that the first meeting after the Christmas recess will be held on the 15th of January 2025. Content with that?
Yep.
I'm taking that as a yes.
Yep.
So any other business? I'm asking members if they have any other items of business that they wish to raise at this moment in time. Yep, Peter.
You'll be aware, Chair, of the cyclist Gary McMahon, who was killed last week. Now Danny may be aware of this as a former Belfast City Councillor, but when we were councillors we were always talking about active travel and how to improve cycling in Belfast, and it just feels like North Belfast has been forgotten about a little bit. So would it be possible to write to the Minister to see about active travel, where we're at with it, what the current levels of spend are, and where we are with the plans, because there's lots of plans about it but nothing really seems to happen specifically in North Belfast. I say that as somebody who's blessed with cycling infrastructure in East Belfast, but having cycled in North, there's a major disparity. So could we write to John or the Minister about that?
Last week we did have the active travel consultation included within our meeting packs, and we probably will be discussing obviously active travel now whenever we go into our closed session in relation to the strategic planning for the committee going forward. But just no problem with writing to the Minister in relation to that, and obviously our thoughts are with his family as well, and it's devastating in terms of, and it's important that there are safety measures put in place for anybody that travels along the roads in whatever form. Members, are you content with that? And just to check, Peter, you're also looking in terms of the funding as well that is allocated, because there is supposed to be 10%. So are you asking them just for clarity in relation to how that?
No, not in relation to that. I mean, so I did media earlier in the week, and the conversation was about that we're spending less money on active travel. I think there was a £16 million pot mentioned that was announced in previous years, and but this was certainly in the media as well. And I think we've spent about a quarter of that. So it's just to see where is that pot at. Are we spending what we should be spending? So this is secondary to the 10%. Okay.
I think it would be useful also just to get an overview of where that 10% is and where that's going as well. Whenever to include that whenever we are writing to the Minister, if you're content with that. Yeah. Anybody else have anything they want to raise? Mark, are you okay?
Just on the 10%, remember the Fish has been in recently on the budget stuff, and we'd asked, and the figure of £200 million, if I recall, was put forward as this year's spend on active travel, or this year's budget, whether or not that's what they spend. But no, it'll be interesting to see where it's going, because there's also, I suppose, been maybe the creative spend of some of that money. They widen a footpath somewhere, resurface a road while they're doing it, and make it an active travel scheme. And I can understand that, because there aren't that many shovel-ready projects. But if there are in North Belfast, it would be keen to see what's ahead about.
And just on that, Mark, I obviously read that story as well. I'm probably deviating from the main topic, but I read that story as well in relation to the widening of the road and active travel money being spent on that. And in some respects, part of me can understand slightly why they have to do that, and why that may be classified as active travel, because to create a cycle lane, you may have to create a better road, and so you can't just leave one part of the road untarred when you're building another part onto it. So it can. It's definitions
I'm
around.
not necessarily being critical of that approach. I've said something here about being creative. I mean, even around issues like traffic calming and that increasing safety for pedestrian routes is enhancing or is, I suppose, promoting active travel. So but it's just what their plans are, where to spend it.
Okay, members content with that? Yeah. Okay. So the date, time and location of the next meeting will take place at 10 a.m. on Wednesday the 4th of December in room 29 Parliament Buildings at 10 a.m. We're now going to move into our closed session where we're going to discuss our strategic priorities in terms of the committee going forward. So I'll now adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
Committee Room 29. Sound.